Welcome to Talent Thrives Here, our podcast where we pull back the curtain on brilliant minds, industry disruptors, and strategic visionaries who know what it truly takes to scale a business. I'm your host, Lance LeFort of LeFort Talent Group. We recruit for top talent right across North America in various categories and various industries. On our show today, we don't just talk about talent, we look at how the right people paired with the right strategy create unstoppable momentum. And today's guest is the absolute definition of a growth architect, an agency veteran who cuts through the marketing noise and the messy, unnecessary spending many companies do. I won't go any further. I want to introduce our guest, B. Randall Willis. Thank you so much for joining us on our show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great, glad to have you here. I wanted to pitch out if anyone listening, if their business growth feels stalled, it's inconsistent, or just hell of a lot harder than it should be. I think we've got you and I've got some good news and bad news. The bad news, they're probably burning cash on what you would call random acts of marketing, right, Randall?
Correct.
And the good news is they don't actually have a marketing problem. In your words, they have a clarity problem. If I could steal a page from your book, right?
That tends to be a problem. Absolutely.
All right. So I wonder if you could impact sort of the formula that you've helped hundreds of companies stop shouting into the void, basically, and get clear before they get louder, and then talk about visibility and real predictable revenue.
Well, we work from the premise it's interesting that you use the word formula because we have a core formula that we call visibility plus engagement equals opportunity. Because we know that once you are engaging with your ideal buyer, that's where the magic happens. So the real job of marketing is, can we bring a brand visible and visible with the intention of creating engagement?
Right, right, absolutely. And are there sort of, I mean, you must see this time and time again. You're pulled into a situation, something's out of alignment, and you kind of have to forensically do a diagnosis. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Right, right. And is there any sort of, is there a common thread? Because, everyone's, especially nowadays, I feel marketing is very fragmented. I worked for ad agencies a million years ago as a recruiter. And, back in the day, we had very traditional sort of legacy broadcasting and legacy media. You were either going to print or billboard or television, but prior to the internet, we didn't, and now the internet has exploded with options. Am I doing Facebook ads? Am I doing TikTok ads? Where should I be right now? And where is my traffic looking? And so I'm curious how you look at, if I could say the client's like a patient and you're trying to do a diagnosis and provide the proper therapy, if I could use those terms. What does that look like for you? Where do you? I guess it's contextual, but with some of your clients, is it often a clear path, or do you have to unpack a lot of things to get to what the formula looks like?
A great question. And there's a few variables that we definitely look at. First of all, are you visible? Because so many people don't, so many brands aren't visible. They feel as though, for instance, social media, they interpret social media the way they do at 10 o'clock at night, sitting at home, scrolling on Instagram. But the reality is we live in a digital world right now. And if you're not visible on the appropriate social platforms, you're already behind the eight ball.
Right.
And if you are visible, are you in the right places? There's a big difference between LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. They all have their audiences. So the real question is, are you visible where your buyer is?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of, I've run a small business. I've been doing this for years, and you know, I found I've had to dip my toe into several places to test. And I'm sure you've done that with many. I'm just curious, is there a sort of rule of thumb or something where you think, well, I've got to test for at least 3 to 6 months, or how do you look at? I guess it'd be better if you had a specific case study or case example to look at. Um, my sort of thing, I've talked to a lot of people. I say like it's 3 to 6 months often to look for an audience or build an audience. But am I wrong? Is that just my metric?
No, it's a great question. And the baseline answer to that question is the word consistency. So the first thing is it's not something you do on a weekend and you're done.
Right.
You want to be consistent. So whatever that pace is, once a day, once a week, whatever that pace is, you want to consistently be visible so that, and remember, you can always increase your volume. You can always increase your pace. But the
Mm,
most important word is consistency. As far as whether it's 3 months, 6 months, I hate to say it, but it's really for the rest of your life because the
right,
day you stop publishing, stop remaining visible, you become an afterthought.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, that's a great comment. I was having a chat with some email marketers this morning, and I just signed up for a Claude course a few months ago, and there's a fellow that's been in my inbox for 3 years. I've just deleted or put his stuff in a folder, for 3 years. And every once in a while, I read something and go, "Oh, that guy's pretty smart. He knows what he's talking about," but I'm not interested. And then when this Claude thing came up, I was super interested, and I'm like, "Oh, bang!" And I can think of other things in my life, and I'm sure it's the same with other people, where when you're ready to buy, you're ready to buy, but you're not ready until that moment, right? But the branding and the impressions and I've no, I took a recruiting course a million years ago. I must have read the guy's stuff for 5 years, and when I read the content, I thought this guy knows what he's talking about. But same thing, I'm like, I'm not flying down to Florida to take a course. I'm good. But he caught me at the end of the year in December, and I was cleaning out folders, cleaning out emails, and I read one of his things, and I was on a plane a few weeks later. But that guy had to send me emails for 5 years before that trigger happened.
Yeah, there's
Um,
something that we call widening the window. So what we talk about is this. When your buyer's in buy mode, you certainly want to be in front of that buyer. But the real question is that too late? Because
mm,
once the buyer's in buy mode, they've already started making decisions. They've already started doing research. They're already in that active mind. When we widen the window, what we're trying to do is talk to your buyer who may not know that your brand, service, or product is actually a solution. They may fit the criteria. They may use like products or services, but they may not necessarily know the value of your particular brand, product, or service.
mm,
So that's really the key. And the way you do that is you show your buyer you get them. You show your buyer you understand their challenges. And when
yeah,
you can do that, your buyers will listen.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, similar. I mean, to these emails I was talking about, same thing. I've read these things for years sometimes and go, this guy clearly gets it, right? I'm not going to fly down to Florida and take the thousands and thousands of dollars of education if I don't trust him and don't think he's an authority and all this sort of other standards or stuff. But I wondered if you could unpack. You and I have talked before, but you have this crazy story about the wonton food paper to mobile strategy, and you generated, millions of unique visitors. So I wonder if you could tell our audience that story. It's a fortune cookie story, if I remember. But kick it off, Randall. Don't let me steal your thunder. Let's
Yeah,
dive into
no,
that one.
really, really an interesting moment in time. When I was originally contacted by the manufacturer of the fortune cookie, they said to me, look, they said, we have a we have a problem. We have a zero profitability product. We are the industry leaders. We have about 80% of the market share. We have a product that is iconic, but it generates no revenue for us. As a matter of fact, if we were even to raise the price of the product 1 penny, we would lose our market share. What do we do? And it turns out the product was a fortune cookie. As we all know, we all love our fortune cookies and our fortunes. We all play games with you open yours first or you open yours first. We keep fortunes in our wallets and in our refrigerators.
Right.
So the fortune itself is an iconic item, but it's also a very delicate item. And once it starts to sound like an advertising piece or it becomes salesy, it loses its value.
Right.
So they said to us, what do we do? And then there were other variables also. If they increased market share, they would actually increase their production costs. So as an example, they produce around 7 million fortune cookies a day. They have four factories
Wow.
running 24 hours a day. So
Wow.
actually taking more market share would actually cause them to have a problem operationally.
Yeah.
So what we said was, can we get the user off that little piece of paper and onto their mobile device? Because when people are eating, we all live in a world where people's phones are right next to them, right?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
asked ourselves, can we get them off the piece of paper and onto a mobile device? And that's where secondfortune.com was born.
Hmm.
And what we found was that with about I'm going to do the numbers in my head. About 7 million uniques a day, 7 million cookies a day, about 238 million a month. But we got about a 35% return, which is about 78 million people a month were actually leaving the piece of paper and going to secondfortune.com. That's a lot of
Wow.
eyeballs. And
Wow.
that was a success. So once we got the eyeballs off the piece of paper, off the fortune,
Yeah.
and into secondfortune.com, that's where revenue started to happen.
Right. You weren't printing QR codes on the cookies, were you? No.
We talked about it, but
Yeah.
actually, the production value of a fortune is not strong enough to actually have a QR code that would actually work.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I mentioned the texture would be the problem. And and,
Yeah.
and so when they go to the app, then I'm assuming that there's upselling and other marketing opportunities once they're on the platform. Yes?
Yeah, yeah. One of the first deals we closed was actually with Pixar, who at the time was launching Kung Fu Panda
Yeah.
and Kung Fu Panda 3, I think in particular.
Yeah.
And they saw it as a wonderful opportunity
Sure.
to promote their movie. And we actually took secondfortune.com and we rebranded it in the Kung Fu Panda mindset. And we built a game around Find Your Lucky Fortune,
Mm.
and it was highly visible.
Yeah. 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 No, that would be amazing. Perfect tie-in. Yeah. I want to tackle another something we talked about. You've advised probably thousands of companies across SaaS and various services, enterprise. Um, when you get an ambitious team or an ambitious leader and they come to you and they're completely convinced of something like, oh, we just need to run more ads or redesign the website or some portion of what we're doing. Um, how do you gracefully kind of rein them in and get back to, your core equation is visibility, engagement, opportunity. How do you bring them back in if they are convinced of something and you think, nope, that's not it. That's really not it.
Well, we're certainly first and foremost respectful.
Mm,
We try to be very respectful of everybody that we work with, friends, family, and foes. Number two, we rely on data. We let the data speak for itself. So it's not an opinion; it's a data. We use data as the ultimate analysis. We also look for low-hanging fruit opportunities. Sometimes they may be fundamentally correct, but maybe their messaging's off. Maybe their calls to actions are off. Maybe there's actually elements within what they're doing that are not performing the way they should be. And then,
right.
of course, we'll bring in alternative suggestions when appropriate to try to show them how they may be missing opportunities by not doing things that they're stuck on. So to your question, if they're so gung ho on a particular tactic, but they don't necessarily understand that there are other tactics out there that are equally viable or
Mm,
maybe even better,
right.
um, we try to do that respectfully.
Right. Right. I've got a. Uh, I know. Let me throw a question at you. Out of the in my background, way, way, way long ago. I remember. You know what Tootsie Rolls look like? Those little brown, waxy,
Of course.
chocolatey-ish, and they only really seem to come out at Halloween, right? In my mind, that's about the only time I'd see it. Maybe in some stores here and there, occasionally during the year, but it seemed to be a Halloween kind of thing. And I'm curious. Let's say I was the whoever owns that brand right now, and I'm not sure it is, but if I came to you and said, we have this thing where 90% of our sales are on Halloween. Um, is there some initial thoughts on what you might do with the brand, the confection, different markets where you could grow their sales outside of the Halloween? Because I think that's the big tent for them in the year. And I'll put you on the spot here. We didn't talk about this earlier, so I'll just
Yeah.
throw it out there. I just wasn't trying to be a gotcha, but I'm curious if you think about it. Um, what would be some of your initial thoughts? Or would you, like when I talk to copywriters, as I have many times, I find it interesting because a copywriter needs to go away and really think through. Um, it seems like there's more trees in their forest and ideas. When I talk to an art director, as I have many times, they've got like, here's an idea, here's a concept, so I find it interesting because I've interviewed many creative teams in my life, and the copywriters often are a little bit more introspective, I guess, or more cerebral, and they're like, I need to think on this for an hour or two and get back to you, whereas the more visual creative guys come out with boop 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 boop. But anyways, I put you on the spot. I hope you don't mind. I'm just curious with
Not at
something like
all.
that.
Not at all. Certainly, any brand, any consumer brand is looking for shelf space and visibility. So
Yeah,
the most magical thing would be if Tootsie Roll was sitting front and center in front of eyeballs 365 days a year. That's going to drive more traffic.
right,
But my gut reaction is, are there co-branding opportunities? One of my
mm,
favorite stories along those lines is Frito-Lay, who did a
right,
deal with Taco Bell. And if you remember, there was a period of time where you could get a Frito-Lay brand uh, uh, taco shell.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
you're doing is you're bringing visibility, you're piggybacking on
yeah,
top of a like brand to
yeah,
bring more visibility to yourself, and you're creating additional um, distribution channels,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Suddenly, Frito-Lay is selling their product through a Taco Bell establishment, which is different than on the shelves of a grocery store. So
yeah,
there's certainly co-branding opportunities would be an interesting opportunity.
yeah,
That would be something that I would definitely want to explore further,
yeah,
and then promotional opportunities.
right.
Maybe Tootsie Rolls can be melted down and be used as part of as a covering on a Dunkin' Donut. Who knows?
Wow, wow,
You
that's cool.
follow me
That's cool.
saying?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I
are
like that.
there other opportunities to use your core product
Yeah,
in ways that increase awareness and visibility?
yeah, yeah. No, that's great. My other thought when I asked that was like, would they build a pink one at Valentine's? That's another idea. Like, or is the chocolate so core to their belief? But I just thought they could build not just Halloween. Maybe Tootsie Roll gets rolled out at Christmas and there's red and green ones. I don't know, right? But augmentation of because in my head, I think they've been chocolate for over 100 years. I'm not sure when they started, but in my head,
Yeah,
it's
no, it's a great idea, and you see that with other brands. Oreo does different
yeah,
seasonal flavors, and everyone's playing with that. The real key, though, is do you have shelf space? Because no,
right,
no matter what color you make your Tootsie Roll, if you're not on the shelf, it doesn't make a difference.
yeah,
So I think the real magic would be in creating more awareness around the Tootsie Roll, more remembering by doing brand partnership deals with other products as a way to remind the audience that Tootsie Roll is an amazing product,
mm,
which would then spur the wholesalers to want to put them on a more prominent shelf space. That's
right,
really what it comes down to is shelf space.
yeah, yeah. And my understanding too, that whole environment is you pay for eyeball level is the most expensive shelf, and the end, the lower the shelf, the cheaper the buy, is my understanding.
And you see this across the board. There are a lot of great products out there. Let's take chips, right? There are a lot of really, really innovative, healthy, effective products. But nobody's moving Frito-Lay. Nobody's moving Doritos for, Bob's corn chip, right?
Right,
Even
right,
if Bob's corn chip is delicious and healthy and
yeah,
cost effective, it comes down to numbers. So you really have to show your distribution places that your product's going to move because distribution is finite. Yes, we live in an internet world where you can buy online, and certainly there are a lot of conversations around influence and influencers and all those tactics which people are trying day in, day out. But the
yeah,
bottom line is shelf space is finite, and you have to demonstrate that your product is going to actually sell
yeah.
for any distributor, whatever area you're in, to create shelf space for you.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool. I want to talk about your agency is Right Angle,
Correct.
and there are many agencies, as you know, scattered all over the world. What do you feel is your superpower or your differentiator? Because you've got a lot of experience. So I'm curious, in the mix of your competitors, what do you feel your biggest strengths? What separates you in the herd?
Content and strategy. Most marketing agencies, and I say this respectfully, are really just production companies. They just
Mm,
make stuff without really an understanding of the strategic goals and where that one particular touch point fits relative to the entire cycle. So yes, you can blog, you can post, you can create videos, you can send out emails. Those tactics unto themselves are not going to be successful unless they're part of a larger story, a larger system. And now in the world that we live in, your messaging is so important. It's more important than ever before because
right.
we're all getting bombarded with what we call noise all day long. So
Yeah.
really that effective, you at the beginning of this conversation, you use the word clarity, and there's a deeper conversation around that. Do I understand my buyer's challenges? Can
Mm,
I articulate to my buyer that I get their challenges? I care about their challenges. If I can do that, they'll listen. So really to answer your question, messaging is more important than ever. And understanding that you're creating a life cycle, that it's not just one particular tactic or touch point, but it's everything that you're doing and how that all works together, which is where the magic is.
gotcha. Good. Well, I'm just conscious of the time, my friend. I think our ADHD enabled audience has probably done 12 things while we're talking. But I hope they've listened in because, look, I love chatting with you, and I do really appreciate the work you do. Is always very interesting, and I worked in recruiting and advertising and media for many years. I'm always fascinated by the insights. You know how your job is really to look at that noise and decipher a way through it, right? And again, for big business impact, and it's always going back to the cookie story, where you've got this fortune cookie selling that many, and there's almost no margin at all in the business. So it's amazing to create. I was talking to a marketer the other day, and they were talking about cigarettes, and we went into this huge conversation about the length, the width of cigarettes, and how long it takes to smoke one. And it's another insight where they delved into the tobacco industry and then went to the users to figure out who's smoking, how much time do they have, is it a smoke break, is it a weekend break, and things that I think the average user wouldn't think about. Cigarettes or fortune cookies, for example, or anything, right? So it's amazing when you guys like you get in there and start digging through all of that collateral and all of the previous efforts, and then try and figure out a way of connecting with clients amidst all this noise. Because now that we've got AI, it's multiplied the noise
Yeah.
probably more than tenfold. I would think it's outrageous right now how much stuff's going on. So, without further I do thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again on some networking calls. And if people want to find you, is LinkedIn the best way of finding you, Randall, or your website? What's the best way of contacting you?
Well, we're very active on LinkedIn. That's our favorite platform of choice because it is a business community.
Yep,
And also our website is extremely important to us, rightangleagency.com. And I want to thank you for having me, and I look forward to future conversations. I look forward to seeing you again soon, Lance.
great. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Great.